If riding doesn't feel the same anymore, it's not in your head. Maybe you've noticed the stares at rallies, the cold shoulders at certain bars, or how some events feel less like a celebration and more like a test. That's not bad luck. It's the work of one powerful motorcycle clan that's been quietly reshaping the culture you thought belonged to all of us. Stick to the end, because the last part will hit closer than you think. The day the open road closed. Once upon a time, the motorcycle scene was an open frontier where anyone with two wheels and a love for the wind could belong. Riders met at diners, country gas stations, and windswept parking lots without any question of legitimacy. The only requirement was a shared passion for the ride. Over years, though, something shifted. A single clan, born from loose gatherings of like-minded riders, began to evolve into an empire with its own rules, boundaries, and hierarchy. At first, the change was barely visible. They claimed the best spots at rallies. They decided who could ride at the front of group runs. Their presence was loud but not yet domineering. Over time, however, that presence turned into control. If you did not know the right people, ride the right bike, or wear the right colors, you were not just ignored, you were dismissed. Events that once felt like a celebration of community became stages for silent auditions you never agreed to enter. It was not simply about riding skill or experience. The clan had crafted a code that turned motorcycling from a shared joy into an exclusive club. Their approval became the invisible toll gate on the open road. What had been a space for freedom now had borders. The open road's new boundaries were only the surface. Beneath them lay a carefully engineered system of power that few outsiders ever glimpsed. Inside the iron hierarchy, the clan's power came from a structure so disciplined it rivaled a standing army. Entry into their ranks was not a matter of showing up with a bike and a smile. It was a drawn-out passage from hopeful prospect to full-patched member, a journey that could take years. During this period, a prospect's life revolved entirely around the will of the club. Prospects fetched food, cleaned bikes, ran errands, and provided security at volatile gatherings. These tasks were not simply chores, they were tests. Every action was weighed, every word recorded in the mental ledger of the members. One mistake could set you back months, or end your bid entirely. A single approval meant nothing. Unanimous acceptance was the only ticket to advancement. The hierarchy itself was unmistakable. At the top sat a president, flanked by vice presidents, sergeants-at-arms, treasurers, and road captains. Below them, full members held authority over every prospect. The ladder was steep, and there was no skipping rungs. That structure was the glue that held the clan together and the wall that kept everyone else out. While the hierarchy kept the machine running, its quiet rules also drew invisible lines about who could even dream of joining. If you've made it this far, you've probably got your own take on what's happening out here. I want to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments, even if you don't agree. And if you're getting value from this breakdown, hit that like button so more riders can join this conversation. The Unspoken Nose. Some rejections were written into the bylaws. Others lived in the sidelong glances and quiet snubs that told you, without words, that you would never be one of them. Women who rode with skill equal to or greater than their male counterparts were told they could only be old ladies on the back of someone else's bike. Riders of color spoke of being shadowed at events, questioned about their right to be there, or flatly told the club was not for them. The exclusion was rarely loud or public. It was woven into the culture. Invitations never came. New riders were told about the wrong nights to show up. Opportunities to prove oneself were dangled and then pulled away. Even within the broader motorcycle community, these patterns created invisible dividing lines. Riders learned quickly which bars, meets, and rallies were safe and which ones would turn cold the moment you walked in. Statistics tell the same story. Surveys from regional motorcycle associations showed that women and minority riders remained drastically underrepresented in traditional clubs, even as their numbers in the general riding population grew. The message was clear: you could ride the same roads, but you could not ride with them. Beyond the people left at the gates, another form of control emerged, woven into the very symbols riders wore on their backs. Forget the gatekeepers. Gear up for your ride. I've dropped links in the description to the gloves, jackets, and helmets I trust. When symbols became currency. For the Klan, legitimacy was stitched into fabric and cast into metal. The patch on your back, the colors on your vest, the emblem on your helmet, these were more than decoration. They were currency, proof that you belonged. Without them, you were invisible. With them, you could walk into any clubhouse or event and be greeted as kin. Over time, these symbols took on a market of their own. Rare patches were traded like collectibles. Vintage jackets fetched prices that could match a month's rent. Even new members had to invest heavily in the right gear to be taken seriously. What began as a mark of loyalty turned into a financial barrier. If you could not afford the uniform, you could not afford to belong. This commercialization bled into the wider culture. Merchandising, both official and knockoff, spread the image of the Klan far beyond its actual membership. Outsiders wore the symbols as fashion, not knowing or not caring that to the Klan, those symbols were sacred. That only deepened the divide. Now the road was not just separated by who you knew, but by what you wore and what it cost to wear it. By the time the last rally closed its gates that season, the Klan had done more than reshape a subculture. They had turned identity into an exclusive currency. The gatekeeping effect. It used to be that a motorcycle rally was an open celebration. Whether you had been riding for 2 months or 2 decades, you could roll up, park your bike alongside everyone else, and immediately feel part of something bigger. Now, many of those same rallies carry an invisible tension. New and casual riders arrive only to be met with cool stares, whispered judgments, and a sense that their presence is a disruption. Stories abound of riders who made the long trip to a major event only to spend most of the weekend on the fringe, unwelcome in the main areas where the Klan gathered. For some, the discomfort turns into fear. There are accounts of casual riders being told to move along from certain campgrounds or being mocked for the make and model of their bike. Riders with smaller displacement engines or less expensive brands are treated as outsiders before they even have a chance to join a conversation. The result is a slow but steady retreat. Newcomers simply stop attending. The social ecosystem shrinks, and the events lose the diversity that once made them vibrant. This narrowing of culture feeds the Klan's power. The fewer casual riders who participate, the more influence the core group has over what counts as motorcycling. Their vision becomes the standard even for people who never agreed to it. From exclusion at the gates to suspicion on the streets, the Klan's influence had begun to reshape not just who showed up, but how the rest of the world saw anyone on a bike. Collateral damage on the open road. The growing notoriety of the Klan brought with it a wave of law enforcement attention. High-profile incidents involving violent clashes or criminal activity led to blanket crackdowns, but those crackdowns rarely targeted only the guilty. Instead, roadblocks were set up on popular riding routes, and entire groups of riders were stopped for identification checks simply because they were traveling in formation. This profiling blurred the lines between outlaw and everyday rider. A retiree on a touring bike could be pulled over alongside a patched member, enduring the same questioning and suspicion. Some officers admitted they could not tell the difference between an independent rider and a member of the Klan, so they treated everyone as a potential threat. The frustration in the broader riding community grew as innocent bikers found themselves subject to searches, delays, and even temporary detainment. Public perception shifted as well. For many non-riders, the image of a motorcyclist became inseparable from the idea of danger or lawlessness. Media coverage often showed the same stock images of leather-clad riders in formation, without noting that most of them were not involved in any illegal activity. The Klan's actions had tainted the reputation of an entire lifestyle. That blurred line between perception and reality would soon be exploited in another arena, the marketplace, where rebellion itself was up for sale. Selling the outlaw look. Somewhere along the line, rebellion became a brand. The rough edges, the leather vests, the defiant stance, everything about the Klan's image was packaged and sold to the public. High-end fashion labels released biker jackets at prices that could cover a month's rent. Motorcycle manufacturers produced special editions styled to look like the machines ridden by the Klan, often with price tags far above their mechanically identical counterparts. The effect was twofold. First, it turned the aesthetic into a commodity, something that could be purchased without any connection to the culture it came from. Second, it raised the cost of entry for riders who wanted to be taken seriously within that culture. If you could not afford the right jacket, boots, or helmet, you were marked as an outsider before you even spoke. For the clan, this commercialization reinforced their power. By keeping the style expensive and exclusive, they could maintain their image as the pinnacle of authenticity. For everyday riders, it meant that what had once been a simple choice of comfort and practicality was now a test of status. A rider could have perfect skill and deep love for the road, but without the approved look, they were invisible. Yet the price of chasing that image was not only counted in dollars. For some, it cost them their place in the very culture they loved. Life as an exiled rider. Being excluded is one thing. Being ostracized from the community you love is another entirely. Riders who fell afoul of the clan's unwritten rules often found themselves not just unwelcome at events, but actively shunned by former friends and riding partners. Some spoke of being removed from group ride invitations without explanation. Others described the coldness that set in at local hangouts where conversations stopped the moment they walked through the door. The reasons for exile varied. For some, it was a refusal to adopt the clan's style or attitude. For others, it was a personal disagreement with a member in a position of influence. Once marked, there was little hope of redemption. The social connections that make riding so rich, the shared routes, the trusted companions, the open invitations, vanished overnight. The emotional toll was heavy. Riding is more than a hobby for many. It is a part of their identity, a source of belonging and joy. Losing that network can feel like losing a piece of yourself. Some riders tried to rebuild by joining smaller, more inclusive groups, but the shadow of the clan's influence often followed them. Others simply stopped riding altogether, their passion soured by the politics of a culture that once promised freedom. Their stories mark more than personal loss. They are the human evidence of how a community can fracture when belonging becomes a privilege, not a birthright. Grassroots revolt on two wheels. The fight to reclaim motorcycling did not start in courtrooms or boardrooms. It started in parking lots, back alleys, and quiet social media groups where riders began organizing their own events with one simple rule: everyone is welcome. These gatherings were intentionally small at first, just a handful of bikes meeting under streetlights for a night ride through the city. The energy was different from the clan-controlled events. No one cared about the brand of your motorcycle or the cut of your jacket. What mattered was that you showed up. Women-led crews began carving out their own spaces, refusing to accept the role of passengers in a culture that had often sidelined them. Diversity-first biker events started popping up in cities from coast to coast, offering not just a place to ride but also a platform to celebrate different backgrounds, styles, and experiences. For many riders who had felt unwelcome elsewhere, these rides were more than just transportation. They were liberation. The movement spread because it was simple. It was easier to create your own ride than to try to win approval from a gatekeeper. And once people experienced a ride without politics or hierarchy, they wanted more of it. Still, some believed that true change could only happen by confronting the clan from the inside, and that meant walking away from what they once fought to join. Breaking patches, building bridges. Leaving a motorcycle club, especially one with the influence of the clan, is not a decision taken lightly. For ex-members, it often means losing a support network, a sense of identity, and in some cases, long-time friendships. But for those who could no longer stomach the elitism, the only option was to break away. The act of turning in a patch was symbolic. It was more than quitting. It was a rejection of the values that patch had come to represent. Some of these defectors did not stop riding. Instead, they formed new clubs built on entirely different principles. These groups welcomed riders regardless of gender, race, or the style of motorcycle they rode. Membership requirements were based on participation and mutual respect, not on years spent running errands for higher-ranking members. In place of rigid hierarchies, they adopted rotating leadership or collective decision-making. These new alliances were multi-ethnic, mixed-gender, and proudly open to anyone willing to ride with integrity. They proved that brotherhood, or sisterhood, did not require exclusion. The rides became not just a statement against the old ways, but a living example of how motorcycling could be both tight-knit and open-hearted. Yet even as new clubs flourished, the old guard's influence over public spaces brought another battlefront into play, one fought not on the road, but in the law books. The law enters the fight. Public safety concerns and political pressure eventually led lawmakers to take aim at one of the most visible symbols of clan power, their insignia. In certain regions, new laws banned the public display of motorcycle club patches in specific venues or at large events. The stated goal was to reduce intimidation and prevent clashes between rival groups. Supporters claimed it leveled the playing field for all riders. Critics argued it was an infringement on personal expression. Court battles erupted. In some cities, judges upheld the bans, citing the connection between specific insignia and documented criminal incidents. In others, the laws were struck down as overly broad or unconstitutional. The legal back and forth created a patchwork of rules that varied from state to state and sometimes from one county to the next. For the clan, the restrictions were more than a nuisance. Stripped of their visual dominance, they lost one of their most powerful tools of influence in mixed company. For independent riders, the absence of the patches at certain events was liberating. It allowed them to mingle without the undercurrent of intimidation. But while laws could shift the balance on the street, a different kind of revolution was brewing in a place the clan had little control over: the digital world. The digital biker revolution. The internet, once an afterthought in motorcycle culture, has become the new main street. Online communities have replaced the physical gatekeeping that once defined who could ride with whom. Discord servers dedicated to specific bike models, Facebook groups for regional riders, and global Instagram meetup networks have made it possible for anyone to find their tribe without passing through the clan's checkpoints. Virtual rallies, live-streamed group rides, and helmet cam ride-alongs have turned motorcycling into something that can be experienced together without sharing the same road. Riders in different countries can plan joint events, swap technical advice, and even organize fundraisers for causes they care about, all without asking permission from a central authority. The digital space has also allowed marginalized riders to find each other quickly and build supportive networks that might have taken years to establish in the physical world. For many, this online freedom has rekindled the joy of motorcycling. It strips away the politics, the posturing, and the pressure to conform. What remains is the pure connection between rider, machine, and community, proving that the spirit of the open road does not have to be bound by geography or guarded by a select few. And as the digital and physical worlds continue to overlap, the stage is set for a new era, one where the clan's grip may finally start to loosen for good. Industry disruption. The clan's grip on motorcycle culture did not just shape social circles, it left deep marks on the industry itself. Dealerships that once thrived on selling affordable entry-level bikes began to pivot toward high-margin boutique machines, catering to the image-conscious market the clan helped create. Manufacturers noticed the shift. Models once designed to bring in first-time riders disappeared from showroom floors, replaced by heavily stylized cruisers with price tags that excluded all but the most committed buyers. The gear industry followed suit. Protective equipment, once marketed for practicality, began to mimic the aesthetics of the outlaw image. Leather jackets came with inflated prices, not because they offered better protection, but because they carried the look associated with clan-approved riders. Helmets, boots, and even gloves were branded as lifestyle products rather than safety necessities. The result was a market that subtly pushed new riders away, not because they could not handle the bike, but because they could not afford the buy-in to look the part. Independent dealers and smaller manufacturers felt the squeeze. Without the budget to compete with the lifestyle marketing machine, many closed shop. This narrowed the options for riders even further, reinforcing the cycle of exclusivity. The marketplace had been reshaped, yet the real battle was unfolding in government chambers where the image of the outlaw became political currency. Political fallout. In politics, perception often matters more than fact. The outlaw image, amplified by both the Klan's real actions and media dramatization, became a convenient symbol for lawmakers looking to push new road legislation. Helmet laws that had long been debated found fresh momentum when framed as a public safety measure against dangerous riders. Noise ordinances gained traction in cities that wanted to curb what they described as gang-like disturbances, even if those disturbances were rare. Most controversial were the so-called anti-gang bills, which bundled motorcycle clubs, both outlaw and legitimate, into a single category. These bills often imposed restrictions on group riding, placed limits on the display of certain symbols, and expanded police powers during motorcycle-related stops. While supporters argued that the measures would reduce crime, critics pointed out that they punished law-abiding riders who shared nothing with the Klan except their choice of transportation. The ripple effect extended beyond legislation. Public perception hardened, and insurance premiums for motorcyclists rose in certain regions. Some local councils began requiring additional permits for large rides, adding red tape to events that had run smoothly for decades. While lawmakers tightened their grip, an unexpected front in the culture war emerged from an unlikely group: workers on two wheels who had never stepped inside a motorcycle clubhouse. Labor on two wheels. Long before food delivery apps and courier services became household staples, motorcycles had been a tool for fast, efficient transportation. But the rise of the gig economy brought a new wave of riders into the public eye. Delivery drivers, couriers, and messengers who worked long hours on small, reliable machines. These riders were not part of the Klan, and they did not care about the trappings of outlaw culture. Their focus was on survival and efficiency. Over time, these gig economy riders began to form their own networks. Informal WhatsApp groups turned into organized unions. Riders shared safety tips, advocated for better pay, and coordinated support for members injured on the job. This was solidarity born from necessity, not tradition. Their goals were practical: health insurance, maintenance stipends, safer working conditions, but the effect was cultural. They were creating a new motorcycle movement that rejected the elitism of the Klan in favor of collective empowerment. Public sympathy for these workers grew, particularly in urban areas where their services became essential. This visibility challenged the one-dimensional image of motorcyclists as either rebels or hobbyists. Instead, they were now also recognized as essential workers who kept cities moving. Their fight for recognition hinted at something bigger: the possibility of reclaiming the ride itself from those who claim to own it. If you want the full story on where the culture's headed and how to keep your place in it, make sure you subscribe. We go deeper into the parts no one else talks about, so you're never left in the dark. Taking back the ride. Reclaiming motorcycling from the shadow of the Klan does not require permission. For everyday riders, it begins with small, intentional choices. Joining inclusive local groups, whether they ride sport bikes, cruisers, or scooters, rebuilds the community 1 mile at a time. Supporting independent dealerships and gear makers keeps money flowing to businesses that prioritize riders over image. Attending or organizing open events sends a clear message that the culture belongs to everyone who rides. It is also about resisting the pressure to conform, wearing what works for your safety and comfort, riding the bike that suits your budget and style, and refusing to measure your worth by someone else's checklist are acts of quiet rebellion. Social media can amplify this approach, allowing riders to showcase diverse styles, routes, and perspectives that challenge the monolithic image the Klan has projected for years. Most importantly, it is about showing up. For rides, for friends, for the next generation of riders who may otherwise be intimidated before they even start. The more visible and welcoming the independent riding community becomes, the less power the Klan's exclusivity holds. In the end, the open road is not theirs to own. It is a shared inheritance, and it is worth fighting for. By the end, the Klan's shadow still lingered, but the road had begun to open again, this time shaped by riders who refused to ask for permission. The road ahead is changing, and the riders who stay informed are the ones who keep control of their own journey. If this opened your eyes, don't just click away, be part of the community that refuses to get shut out. Hit subscribe so you never miss the next deep dive, drop a comment with your take, and share this with the riders who need to hear it most. The more of us who know the truth, the harder it is for anyone to take the culture we love. Your voice matters. Let's keep it loud.